Pani. Good morning, everyone. So I am back after a Diwali break, and with a new prapanch of Mr. Arvind Kejriwal, Lakshmi Ganesh photo on currency notes, though in its developing phase, but we will subsequently cover that what is the use and utilization of the news. So I believe that you had a good Diwali, wherever you are. So now starting with the news, which is largely today's newspaper was important in the pretext of prelims examination. Some part of ethics is there. There is the concept of global citizenship, GEAC, and GM crops, and how regulator decides the fine. These are the broad topics which we are going to cover in the times to come. Now, starting with the first news. Now, you will find a mention of this news not exactly in the paper, but starting with the India's victory on Pakistan, and there is this news ostrich by Kohli. So, though it is relevant from the perspective of paper 1, but it can be utilized anywhere. So, the notion in this news is that Australians are fascinated by the way how Kohli plays, and this is the first time that the larger populace of Australia is considering Virat Kohli as one of them. No, this is not the first time that they were awestruck by any player. In the initial days of cricket, they were awestruck by Vivian Richards, Sachin Tendulkar, Lara, and Sunil Gavaskar too. But this is the first time that in the larger media, which generally reflects the narrative of in a country, they say that Kohli is one of them. One, because of his aggression. Two, because of his extreme focus on physique or fitness and how he plays the game. Now, why we are discussing this? Because we know that somehow Australia and India compete in the context of cricket, and that in a bit aggressive way too. Yet, when the acceptance of any cricket player in the larger discourse of citizenship is there or oneness is there, then we can say that we are moving towards a world which is characterized by the notion of global citizenship. Now, what is global citizenship? So, a global citizenship is the idea that one's identity transcends geography or political borders, and the responsibilities or right are derived from membership in a broader class, and that is humanity. So, this is the part, but you see the nationalism can have many broad contours, and this cricket nationalism in India, or for that matter sports nationalism anywhere around the world, figures that contours. So, you see that the same can be said about the Messi, that Messi was not playing well in the World Cup. Some youth in Kerala committed suicide, and the same goes with the Barcelona team, or for that matter anybody who prefers the team anywhere. So, this is the part that sports has emerged as a new notion where the notion of global citizenship can be found, and this has helped in integration of the country. One, two, that global citizenship have a broader connotation, that is that transcend or that goes beyond any boundary. So, this was about the global citizenship, and we will find its use in the things that are happening around the world. For example, environmental movement is there. Environmental movement related with poverty, movement related with the women's right, or any of the LGBTQ rights. So, these are the things that where the notion of global citizenship, and more importantly we have seen that there is this broad derision over any policies to OTT of the directors of the cinema hall, that what to watch and what not to watch by the movie theaters. So these are the things which has completely stopped altogether. So this is where the notion of global citizenship and more broadly based on the notion of humanity is guiding the new world, and it is creating an integration. So creating integration around the world. That's why the notion of global citizenship is changing the broader political sovereignty of a country. Okay, political sovereignty of a country. So this is what about global citizenship. Now in another of the initiative, Prime Minister Modi had said that, we have to adopt swadeshi, we have to become self-reliance to keep culture, art alive. So in this context, he said that the prosperity of a nation is dependent on its economic prosperity, and by adopting indigenous products, one can keep the art, culture and civilization alive. One can keep art, culture and civilization alive. Largely this means that Prime Minister Modi is not going to wear the Movado watch or Maybach sunglasses. So he will be focusing upon the Timex and Fast Track kind of watches. But yes, that is said in lighter vein. So Swadeshi and self-reliance is extremely relevant in present times. This is the mantra of the progress for self-reliant India. So this is what Mr. Prime Minister has said about it. The overall adoption of the Swadeshi. So it can increase the economy of the scale, and it can also help in research and innovation. So because the economies of scale will propel the demand. But again, the larger part is that most of the Swadeshi items are bit and excessively costly. So there is this commercialization in case of the Swadeshi item. So even when one want, someone won't be switching to Swadeshi, because the larger framework is economic rationalization, and we are lacking at many directions and times. In fact, previously when he was visiting Kedarnath, Modi also said, which we have discussed in the last class, that we have to spend some item on buying the local products. So this is just creating some kind of behavioral changes. Now that another news which is important from the perspective of the prelims is that UNSC counter-terrorism was scheduled in Mumbai in India with the theme of countering the use of new and emerging technologies for the terrorist purposes. So we have seen that there is the first conviction of the cyber terrorism in case of Maharashtra, where a youth has just so that he told that he will blow up the school. So this was the main theme, that use of emerging technologies for spreading terror is an issue of increasing concerns across the globe. Mindful of the increasing threat posed by the misuse and new emerging technologies, as well as the many positives of the technologies for countering terrorism, the Countering Terrorism Committee proposed to hold a special meeting in India for the first time. Now we have seen that the issues like Bitcoin, in ransom, and many individual associated attacks on the, and even the country sponsored attack on the issues are there. So in this case, it will at least charter out a broad guideline on which the issues can be resolved. So this is what the news was about. You have to remember the theme and the places that it occurred at. Now there is this news Broadcasting and Digital Standard Authority of India, again important from the perspective of the prelims, but as well as it is important from the perspective of the paper 4 also, and paper 3 regulation also. The news is that News Broadcasting and Digital Standard of India fined 50,000 on the News 18 network, where they incited the panelists to go or harp on some communal line. So what is News Broadcasting and Digital Standard Authority? So News Broadcasting Standard Authority is an independent body set up by the News Broadcasters Association. its task is to consider and adjudicate upon the complaints about the broadcaster. Now, they have devised a code of ethics to regulate television content as a self-regulation mechanism. That NBSA is the empowered to warn, administer, censure, express disapproval and the fine a broadcaster sum of ₹1 lakh for the violation of the code. Further, they are saying that they should be made as an independent regulatory mechanism to deal with the complaints which strengthen the news broadcasting standard regulation of India. Now, we have NBSA, yet we have Arnab Goswami and many people like them, where the communal overtone can be witnessed or visualized in the overall discourse about the news, and just the sensationalization about it. So you see that NBSA helps in that domain, but as it is appointed by the newspaper only, or the persons who run the newspaper broadcasters, so the independence is not there. Right now, the retired Chief Justice of the Supreme Court is the chairman of NBSA, but the overall thing is that sometimes it can fine up to ₹1 lakh only. So this is the thing which is stopping, or the impact of the regulation is not much can be witnessed in case of NBSA. Now, this is another important news, medical negligence, and the context of this news was that we are hearing that the veracity of the claim is yet to be ascertained, but there is this person who was infused with or Mausami juice, as it is alleged, in place of in the case of dengue, where the transfusion of platelets was supposed to happen, and it has often been alleged that this is the case. Now, so in that case, we have to understand that what is medical negligence, and what are the broad parameters, what are the current mechanism that is guiding the medical negligence in India, and what is the ethical imperative related with medical negligence. Now, any negligence by an act of omission or by an act or omission of a medical practitioner in performing his or her duty is known as medical negligence. Medical negligence happens when the medical practitioner fails to provide the care which is expected in such case, thus resulting in injury or death of the patient. Now, what does the term the act of omission means in this case? So you see, there are two parts, the act of omission and act of commission. So not to do something which a prudent man in similar situation will do, that is act of omission. Act of commission, to do something which is prudent, which a prudent man will do in similar situation will not do. So the act of omission is there. Act of omission, to do something which a prudent man in similar situation will not do, and omission, not to do something which a prudent man in similar situation will do. So this you have to remember. Now, Supreme Court in Jacob Matthews case has laid the guideline, Jacob Matthews versus State of Punjab, about the profession of medical negligence. So a professional may be held liable for negligence on one or two of the finding, that either he is not possessed of the requisite skill which he claims, or he does not exercise with reasonable competence in the given case the skill which he possesses. So there, what we have to understand is this one, that negligence is also associated with quackery and fake degrees. So probably a person who has done BHMS or BAMS is practicing allopathic medicine, then this can be considered as medical negligence. Further, if one is supposed to operate on a person and he is just trying to give medicine, then that tantamounts to, or that just shows act of negligence. So this was about that. Now, Supreme Court in further R. Matthews versus State of Kerala has said that good practices elsewhere is not a ground for medical negligence. Now, what does this mean? Say some better treatment is available at Delhi, and that the same treatment was not available at, say, probably some part of Northeast. So saying that the doctor could have used that treatment to save the patient does not consist of medical negligence. If in the best scenario that what he have and what is doing with the above condition is changing or decides that what is medical negligence. Suppose in a setup he don't have the necessary and required instruments, so what he does and how he conducts the overall procedure does signifies, and if suppose if there is an act of omission in that, then that will consist of medical negligence. For example, suppose if an accidental victim went to some primary healthcare hospital, or the basic thing is that you have to undergo ultrasound and such as testing mechanism, because you see that how some person is affected and victimized. So in this case, if we don't have the ultrasound machine, then it will not part of the medical negligence. But if he is having it and if he is not doing it, then that will consist of the mechanism. Now further, there was this very famous case, and it is always said that Bolam test. So Supreme Court also said that you have to remember it, Bolam test. Supreme Court said that the Bolam test is the required criteria sufficient in itself to determine negligence. Now, what is Bolam test? A doctor need not possess higher skills. So, for example, one don't have to be very special and specialized in some part of the skills. Now, it is sufficient if the doctor exercises the ordinary skill of a competent doctor exercising that particular skills. Means if he knows the standard operating procedures, then that will do. Further, must use knowledge, clinical examination, diagnosis, treatment or advice of another doctor in a similar situation will do. So this is the part that Bolam test is. So probably Bolam tests, if you ask that what Bolam test is related to, then you will write that medical negligence, and these are the broad contours on which the Supreme Court said that a medical negligence can be established. Now, how medical negligence in case of India is guided? So the Indian Nursing Council Act 1947, Code of Medical Ethics, Clinical Establishment Act, Code of Medical Ethics 2002, Clinical Establishment Act 2010. The issue that this is very bold. This is very old. Further, this is about Code of Medical Ethics is about self-regulation. Third, Clinical Establishment Act is left to the state to implement. But many times, that part is not established. Clinical Establishment Act wala jo part is not implemented by the states, and further there are so many variations. For example, pathological procedure don't come under the Clinical Establishment Act, even though it comes under, but they are not regulated by it. So to ascertain, this is the part that we have to understand, that no doctor knows everything. There is a reason why it is called practicing medicine, and it is related with the Bolam test. Further, this is very important in the today's time, because everybody now has an opinion about what should have been doctored, what should a particular doctor could have done, or probably how would have a cricketer played so that the match can be saved. So in this case, this is a statement by Hippocrates. Medicine is of all the arts the most noble, but owing to the ignorance of those who practice it and those who inconsiderately form a judgment of them, it is at present far behind all the other arts. So this is what this issue is all about, that maybe there is a chance that it could have been the platelet, but because the color of the platelet transfusion and the Mosemi juice is same, so people are saying that that they have been infused with the transfusion. Though the issue of medical malpractices is there and nobody denies it, but the thing is that the nature of the media sensationalization and overall the presence of a Google as in, alternative source is creating a mistrust towards the doctor. This mistrust, because see, half the time we don't know the procedures and we have the vague idea and we try to implement it. So this result in lack of trust. And they got the trust by conducting or practicing it for 5 or 8 years, whatever. Further, why trust is emanating in many parts of India is that, or we can be seen that a doctor was killed, or he was, somebody broke his leg or her leg, or he is in jail. So you see that there is a decrease in the practice of family medicine. Family medicine is very important in this case because initially the practice of family medicine built a trust when the doctor heard the patient for more than 5 minutes or whatever is the, he just interacted with the patient very patiently. Now that in primary healthcare it is only 2 minutes. A doctor listens to a patient, and in the same is the even tertiary health also, tertiary healthcare also. So this is the reason that doctors are not hearing the patient. So this is also creating a mistrust towards the overall system. Now, what is the ethicality related in with the doctors? Hippocratic oath, we all know that, a promise that we will save the patient, we will try to. Formula commit secretarium, it demands from physician that they widen and deepen their knowledge and enacts the consultation with other physician. Further, Indian Medical Council, Professional Conduct, Etiquette and Ethics Act, Regulation 2002, a physician shall uphold the dignity and honor of his profession. The prime object of the medical profession is to render service to humanity. Reward or financial gain is a subordinate consideration, but that is also changing now. Further, physicians should merit the confidence of patient entrusted to their care and try continuously to improve medical knowledge and skills. Third, generally followed medical healthcare ethics, medical triage. See, basically triage is the process of determining the priority of the patient, treatment based on the severity of their condition. This rations patient treatment efficiently when resources are insufficient or to be treated immediately. For example, a pregnant woman will be given primacy over the old age person, or a child will be given the primacy over the other patient in similar situation. Further, there is this other part, duty of care. So a doctor has a duty of care towards his patient. Within this duty of care, if any negligence arises which subsequently creates damages which can be direct or instant or remote, then damages has to be paid. But in such case, foreseeability of remoteness is seen. For example, in vasectomy fails, after some time doctor says not responsible after some time. Now, this was about the duty of care. Further, there is this news, again we have discussed it briefly in the beginning of the class, that who designs rupees notes. So decided by the Reserve Bank of India and the central government in the case of rupees note, but the larger power lies with the Reserve Bank of India. It has to be any changes in the rupees design and part has to be approved by the RBI central board and the central government. Further, change in the design of coins is the sole prerogative of the central government, and it is commanded by the Coinage Act, not by the section 22 of the Reserve Bank of India Act 1934. But this act gives the RBI the sole right to issue banknotes. Banknotes in India, section 25 states that the design, form and material of the banknotes shall be such as may be approved by the central government after consideration and the recommendation of the RBI central board. This was the part about it is the sole prerogative of central board. Further, the RBI's Department of Currencies Management is the authority designed for the changing of notes. Further, two of the India's currency notes printing, Nasik and Devas, are owned by the government of India. Other two in Mysore and Salboni are owned by the RBI through its wholly owned subsidiary Bharati Reserve Note Mudran Limited. Now this was about the further GM mustard. So this is in the news because even if you on the very first page you will see that for the first time, GM crop may be way, mustard trials get note. So this is the note given by GEAC. The reason being because we are facing the high forex burden on the case of mustard because of the rise in the price of mustard oil, or for that any edible oil. So Forest and Climate Change recommended the environment release of the transgenic hybrid mustard DMH11 for the seed production and conduct of field demonstration studied with the respect of the GM mustard. What exactly is hybrid mustard? Hybridization involves crossing two genetically dissimilar plant varieties that can be even for the same species. The first generation offsprings from such cross tends to have higher yield than what either parent can individually give. Such hybridization isn't easy in mustard as it follows having both female and male reproductive organs, making the plant largely self-pollinating. Since the eggs of one plant cannot be fertilized by the pollen grains from the another, it limits the scopes of the developing hybrids, unlike in cotton, maize or tomato, where this can be done through simple emasculation or physical removal of the anthers. Now, what GEAC has done now? GEAC is the body which is responsible. So GEAC is the body responsible for appraisal of proposal relating to the release of GM organism and product. In this case, it has recommended the environmental release of DMH11 for its seeds production and testing prior to commercial release. So GEAC is the main body. It has also recommended the environment release of DMH11 parental lines. Mustard varieties in India have a narrow genetic base. The Barnes-Bannister system enables breeding of hybrid from a wider range of mustards, including those of East European origins of Hira and Donskada. How that is the part, but you see that there is an opposition by the farmer body on the overall use of mustard, because they are saying that such moisture will not be pollinating, or the honeybee will not be pollinate on the mustard seed, which is an important industry. So the committee headed by GEAC said that no such, these are the fear mongering created by some vested interest, and in the line they said that no, such issue will not happen. But the reality is that as the population is increasing, it is very important to understand that maybe in sometimes in the future, GM crop is the only way, though there has been oppositions at many places, at various places. But there is only one incident which has happened in America, where the Japanese wheat, in Japan, where the American GM seeds was used, and it has resulted into death of many persons, or the food was some bit toxic. So such toxicity levels would has to be under only when we will try it, and there has been field trial and it was effective. So in the times to come, there will be more clarity on overall aspect of this. Further, we have seen and we have discussed that many a times Google is imposing fine, CCI is imposing fine on Google. So what is the procedure and how it is decided? In a landmark judgment in 2014, the Supreme Court had ruled that the penalty should be imposed not only to, see, this is the criteria of 10%, that you cannot only on the relevant turnover you can impose the penalty, and for the CCI this is stating that 10% of the total 3 years and the average of it decides the relevant fine in case of any penalty, and the Google is questioning this methodology. But CCI said that okay, the Supreme Court judgment is fine and we will consider that a 3 years fine can be imposed upon. So this was largely the news that can be inferred from today's paper. Third part, not that necessary, but you have to remember it, just 10% criteria and the 3 criteria, so that it can be relevant in the prelims and such other issues. Okay, and that is all we can infer from the Indian Express newspaper today, and with that we will end up the class. Okay, thank you.